The brain is absolutely ridiculous and one of the least understood aspects of the natural kingdom. We don't even understand how the brain of a worm works, so how on earth are we meant to comprehend our own evolved grey matter? Psychology has been officially studied for around 130 years and we're still making huge discoveries each year. My mum's a psychologist, so I grew up hearing about all of this stuff and really took for granted some of the things I learned. So like any responsible millennial, I decided to start a podcast about it and share the sweet, sweet gift of therapy. I'm sat on the couch with my mum, Sandy. She's a psychologist with over 20 years experience studying and treating clients. Hi Mum.
Hi Ed.
We're going to release a new episode each and every week talking about a different aspect of mental health and therapy, and hopefully some of you will find it really useful. All of our episodes are on YouTube if you want to watch us like sit in our living room. Today we've just had some crisps, so we're going to be spending the episode picking bits of crisp out of our teeth, so you can go on YouTube and watch us do that. The link is going to be in our Instagram bio @onthesofapod. Please go and give us a follow if you're enjoying the podcast. Rate 5 stars on iTunes, all that good stuff. It really does help us out. This week we're on the final week of our confidence and insecurity month. And self-esteem, and last week we talked about self-esteem and how it's like the inner self and like your self-beliefs, and today we're going to be talking about confidence and how we believe confidence is a skill and more like an outward appearances thing, right?
Yeah.
Cool, let's go.
So low confidence looks like social anxiety, difficult concentration, confrontations, hates the outside of the comfort zone kind of feeling, which promotes overthinking, which promotes loneliness, etc, etc.
So like all the things we've really talked about, it really spirals very quickly.
And people often say, well, what's caused it? And there's lots of different reasons, but it can be through peer pressure. It can also be through undiagnosed autism, Asperger's, bullying, inappropriate social interactions with, partners or parents or peers.
This is like low confidence where you don't feel like you can present yourself well in the world.
Which must be really, really terrible.
Because we're not necessarily saying that you don't believe your worth.
No.
Your self-worth could be really good, right?
Yeah, definitely. So it's the opposite to what we spoke about before in a way. You can have really good self-esteem, but just lack that confidence. And I think it's helpful to ascertain, why do I lack confidence? So it's just back to basics, isn't it?
Where did it start?
Do you lack confidence in anything?
Me? Lack confidence in an area? I'd say I lack confidence in probably my craft, probably what I do the most.
Because?
Because, I think actually, this is probably maybe a little interesting, I think it ties into the self-esteem thing, that I don't believe that I am deserving potentially of the things I do, like being able to earn money from music or whatever, and so I don't have confidence then to show other people in case they say, no, this isn't that good, and then that reinforces my belief, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
So what, like self-esteem just in this particular area that we're talking about,
so the area of work for me
is lower
potentially. I think a lot of musicians and creators feel the imposter syndrome thing because it's such an unorthodox route, but yeah, I think like that imposter syndrome thing is very self-esteem based, like not thinking you're deserving of your achievements, and then not being very confident is because someone else then has the opportunity to be like, yeah, you're not actually that good at that, and then it's like, but that really hurts because I'm already tender, so you don't have the confidence maybe to. I think it can go either way, can't it? You can either be hyper confident and come across as maybe arrogant, which is also an indicator of low self-esteem, or you can maybe go the other way.
So if we're just like looking at you, because that's a really good example, and we've just highlighted that the self-esteem issue, this isn't global, this particular issue, it's part of you.
Yeah.
That's self-esteem. So what you said there sounds... Well, let me ask you this question. Has anybody ever done that to you?
Well, so they don't like what I do? All the time. And I think that's really natural. I think that's a constructive feedback, and honest feedback is really important, I think, if you want to improve. But because I'm starting from a basis of potentially insecurity in the work area, like low self-esteem in my ability there, it's hard to take criticism. I think, again, a lot of creators, I think, struggle with criticism for that reason, that a lot of creators struggle with insecurity and low self-esteem. And then when someone comes in and goes like, oh, I'm not really sure about that idea, or maybe you could try this instead, it's like, oh no, I don't believe I'm very good, and then this person is reinforcing that I'm not very good.
So have you had examples that counteract that?
All the time. But confirmation bias, like we talked about last week, it's your internal narrative, isn't it? Someone could say, oh, well, it's happened recently. I'm really lucky that I've worked with artists that have been like, oh, I enjoyed today so much, I'd love you to produce my whole EP instead of just one song, which is, I'm so grateful, that's amazing. But I don't think about those things. I don't.
But why not?
I don't know, that's just water off a duck's back, isn't it? But you fixate on the time that one of my best friends, who I respect his opinion so much, and like he was completely right. He's like, oh, I'm not really sure that this is so specific, sorry everybody, I'm not really sure that those drums are big enough. And he was trying to help. I asked him for feedback, he gave me some honest feedback, and he's right, but I still feel that it's like, ooh, I wanted you to be,
I can see it, I see that.
I wanted you to be like, oh Adam, it's amazing, it's a smash, it's so good. And every time you don't get that little like drip of affirmation, it's like, oh, really
okay
hurts.
So I think in that brilliant example,
thank you everybody,
what I would be trying to help you with is, number one, remember that on one hand it's all positive,
yeah, that's true,
and on the other hand there are elements of negative. And I think when the negative starts trickling in, and these aren't balanced, I would imagine the positives far outweigh the others.
I think for most people, yeah.
But I think what's important here is for you to remember, hey, when that thought comes in, and that, because it's almost like it hits your feelings.
It's such a
so
knock, isn't it?
quickly.
Yeah, and it's like, then, I mean, the ramifications of that are, oh, I don't want to do any work this week. Oh, I don't want to make music this week because I'm not any good. It just feels really rubbish when I do. It's the reward center in the brain, isn't it? Like, you don't get that reward, you get the opposite,
and it does
stress.
Knock you.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about that.
And this is in any profession or any, it's not specifically music, obviously.
No.
This is very, my example is hyper music focused, but
like I gave you an example of something that happened to me the other day. It does not because I've got low self-esteem, it just throws you. But for you, I think in order to try and change that is, when we can't stop a thought coming to you, because that's impossible. You can't just stop thoughts, that's weird. Whoever says you can, they're lying to you. You can't. But what you can do is notice it and say, hang on a minute, on this hand I've had lots of amazing feedback, and this is not meant to hurt me. It's meant to help me. It's also
going in the positive feedback part. It's like, oh, it's great, but you could try this.
So again, we've talked before about self-talk. Self-talk is so helpful if you can notice when to use it. Now, because of your body language when you were telling that story,
YouTube people are getting so much more today.
Oh, are they?
People watching on YouTube, they can see, they can watch all this, they can come and analyse themselves.
It's clear that the impact is pretty high and disorientating. So it's time for you to learn to notice, be aware, but it's not meant as a criticism. And you've said it yourself, it wasn't meant as a criticism, it's meant as a constructive.
What you're talking about, I'm going to psychologise a sec. Psychologise? Is the book The Happiness Trap, which is, so it's similar to CBT. It talks about ACT, which is like a more modern interpretation of CBT, and it's where you don't stop thoughts at all. And CBT is often about trying to like change habits of thinking, isn't it, and like change the way you think. Well, ACT doesn't actually promote that at all, because I didn't get on with CBT. ACT promotes you to have the thought and notice it, like you just said, and acknowledge it, and then it talks about diffusion, which is where you separate the thought from reality. So it's like, this is just a thought, like the truth of it is still in dispute, and then you can decide how useful the thought is, and you can be like, right, okay, so I'm not good at production, that isn't useful at all, but the useful thought is he cares about my music enough to offer me help, and then that's the productive part of that originally negative thought. So ACT is about kind of like taking the good parts of your thoughts and just disregarding the bad parts and being analytical.
And just to add to that, because that's a good example, I had a complaint from a parent in work, and what they said about my work really upset me. But the reason I'm mentioning this is, here's what I do. I am upset because it hurts when somebody, it doesn't matter what you do, it hurts if you've got pride in what you do. But then when I often talk about bouncing back, the next day or the day after, I will bounce back. And what I'll do is I'll take those comments and unpack them and for their reality, and think, was that true or wasn't it?
Because you want to be as good as you can at what you're doing. If someone has a genuine complaint about your business, that's absolutely fine. You want to make sure they have the best experience possible.
And I'll be the first to apologise if I get it wrong. But I think you need to dissect once you've recovered. Could that be true, what was said there? Or is that the mother... is that why the kid's like that? Because of the mother?
Trying to be defensive,
you know?
Of course.
So I deliberately take time out to write that down and look at it and work it out. I know it's subjective, but I think it's a skill and a quality to try and maintain healthy self-esteem and maintain your confidence.
We have gone a bit off, but I mean, it's all good stuff, eh? You said that it can be caused by peer pressure and bullying and inappropriate social interaction, low confidence this is, and it can become a phobia. How does that happen?
Well, it can stop you, because some people aren't comfortable speaking in groups,
public speaking,
or they don't want to make eye contact because of their condition, so they don't want to go to the shop because the cashier might talk to them. They don't want to talk, they don't feel comfortable talking, they don't even like the sound of their voice.
So it starts with, don't want to talk in groups, and then the groups get smaller, it's like, I still don't want to talk, and it snowballs and snowballs.
It can do.
Okay.
And then I don't want to go out. I don't want to mix with anyone, and so they become very, very lonely, isolated, and lose confidence in what they used to do.
You've written things like escalator story. Do you want to use that as an example?
Yeah,
your personal experience.
I think it's quite an easy one, but so how can I condense this? Basically, I suddenly developed this huge fear of going down the escalators, and I'm like, what? This doesn't even make sense. And it got so bad that I thought, I've got to suss this out, because this is absolutely ridiculous, particularly if I'm travelling to London and going on the tubes. So I thought, okay, well, how did this start? And I remembered my grandmother, because of her age and era, she hated them because they didn't have that many where they lived in, and she was one of my closest attachments.
Right.
So just stick with me while I go through this.
So you've started off with someone who doesn't like escalators, who you really trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've lost a long time ago. Then what happened was we were in America and I was pregnant with Max heavily, and Grandad accidentally pushed me over, and I was afraid that I was going to lose the child.
Which is very traumatic.
But I bounced back.
But you fell down an escalator. You didn't just fall.
Yeah. Fell down the escalator while it's moving. So that, and again, that's like, we're talking 19 years ago, right? Long time. So then I thought, well, it started slowly. I think I'll just take the stairs. I think I'll go in the lift. And then when I went to Sweden a few years ago, there was an escalator like I've never seen in my entire life. And it was, it was like that, literally.
Really?
And it was not just like that. It was like half a mile long.
Right. And that just tipped it over the edge for you.
And I just thought, oh, there's no way I'm going down that escalator. And my partner's already at the bottom shouting, come on, what are you doing? So I accosted this railway chap and he said, no, I'm on my lunch break. And I started crying. I said, I can't go down the lift.
Get off your lunch break.
Get off your lunch break. And he did actually help me down the lift. But I thought, I've got to solve this. And so we don't have many lifts where we live, but there's one in Marks and Spencer's, and that's where I practiced.
You go there 8 hours a day, up and down.
But it was interesting to sense that it's probably had a unconscious connection to my grandmother, who I adored.
And then it's been triggered and triggered again, and then
then it's like, where has this come from?
But you've solved it, or in the process of solving it, through exposure therapy, which is on our list, which is something we wanted to talk about, which is, we've talked about it before. It's really scary, but it's where you force yourself to really slowly do the thing that you're scared of, and like little by little you'll find the confidence actually it comes back trickling at first and then floods back as soon as you realise that this isn't a threat anymore. It's just your brain trying to keep you safe ultimately, and as soon as you realise it's safe, you're good to carry on with it.
And not forgetting, you need to build your mind up to how ridiculous this is.
So I think like confidence for most people is like around other people. Social confidence is a huge thing. Like public speaking is obviously a bigger deal. That doing presentations at work, or even like talking in a group of friends can be a big deal. And whatever, Zoom call confidence. There's so many aspects of this is really important. So you put on your notes about like ways to practice building this back up, because some people just seem to have this innate ability to just speak in a group, and you're like, how on earth do they do that? Where do they get that confidence from? So how can you build up your confidence?
Well, again, it's self-talk, because they've got intrusive thoughts. I'm not going to talk because something will come out my mouth and sound really stupid, and then everybody will laugh at me. So it's about reversing that and saying that's not necessarily true. That's a negative automatic thought, CBT. So negative automatic thoughts in CBT we call gnats, and you have to try and visualize all these gnats going around your head, and you don't want them anymore. So use practice self-talk in a positive way. Look in the mirror when you're doing it so that you can see yourself saying, no, what I want to say has value. And people won't laugh at me, and if they do, then they don't get me.
One thing to say, mantras and self-talk and talking in the mirror and stuff, they sound so dumb. They sound so silly, and you'll feel silly doing it. Like I definitely do. They aren't a very natural thing to like say that I'm gonna have a good day, I'm gonna have a good day, like you are worthy, all of these mantras, whatever. They sound ridiculous, but they are 100% proven to work, unfortunately. So if you if you can practice them and really do them with conviction, they are going to have an effect.
I'll give you an example, a true example, very quickly. It's a long time ago, years ago, and I was due to speak in front of a few thousand people at a seminar. And I was rushing from clinic to this place, this city, and I was driving, and I could feel my legs shaking with anxiety, and it was really bad. And I thought, for goodness sake. So I pulled the car over, stopped the car, and I gave myself a really hard talking to, literally with self-talk. And I thought, don't be absolutely ridiculous. If you don't know something, just say you don't know it, because that's the fear. So I was like, well, what are you fearing? I'm fearing somebody might ask me something I don't know. Well, if they do, just say I don't know.
Sorry,
but I'll come back to you.
Yeah.
So I got back in the car. I mean, the adrenaline from something like that takes 90 minutes to leave your body. So you have to know that and remember, I'm going to be all right. It'll be gone in an hour and a half.
Sit through it.
And I'll be there by then.
Okay, and the last thing I want to talk about today is boundary setting. So if you're somebody who struggles to set boundaries with anyone or even with yourself, that's going to eat away at your confidence because you don't feel like you have the authority in a group or in whatever, even with yourself, to stop things happening or make things happen. And that is going to really knock you back, I think, if you can't say to people like, I want you to leave at this time, and then they don't leave, you feel like you're being trod on, and even if they're your friends, it's difficult. So some things to like help you set boundaries, and also the most crucial thing, stick by them.
I think a good example of this is because I train a lot of psychologists and supervise them, and I've been guilty of this myself over the years. A therapy session in our clinic is an hour. For some clients, they don't keep a check on the clock, and you have to physically remember where you are in that conversation and try and get it closed for o'clock, whatever it is. And a lot of people go over. Now, if you go over and you're working on a back-to-back system, the only person that's really going to suffer is you. So you're not respecting your self-esteem, and you're definitely going to affect your confidence.
Definitely, and in such a strenuous and difficult situation as being a therapist.
And how fair is that on the next client as well, really?
Yeah.
So I do instill that in my supervision as well. Don't run over. Keep an eye. It's your job as well to keep an eye on the clock. And
set a boundary and keep it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, in social situations, it could start as silly as like if someone asks you, do you want a cup of tea? And you'd be like, yeah, I'd love a cup of tea, but you don't want one, but you just don't want to upset them and say no. So maybe the first thing you can do is say to people, no, I'm actually all right today. And that could be the start of you setting boundaries with someone, and it could build up. And then I've written down, then it could be like, oh, you could stay for dinner if you want, and you could stay till 5. And it's like, actually, I'm not going to stay till 5 today. And you don't always need to explain no as well. This is like the power of no is really, it's really important to just be able to be like, nah, I'm all right, thanks. And not have to say, oh no, I've got to rush off to pick the kids up or whatever, because then they're going to expect you to come back afterwards, or you've got to make another excuse and it gets more stressful. Whereas if you stop making excuses, you're just like, actually, I'm sorry, it's not for me, or no, I'm all right, thanks. That's completely fine. And you'll find if people say that to you, you're fine with it. You don't feel it's blunt or rude.
So it's a skill, isn't it?
Being able to just saying no, and it's something to really practice actually, is saying no with no excuse. And it gives you a sense of like power almost.
Empowerment, yeah.
Really, really. And it doesn't, the other person you're going to think is going to think you're really rude and blunt. But you don't have to be like, no. You can say that, I'm okay, thank you. And you're not giving them an option to come back at you. There's no excuse. It's just, I don't want that to happen. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And then finally just someone is saying, oh, can I come over tonight? And just being like, no, sorry. And you're building up from, I don't want a cup of tea, to, I don't want to see you. But you do it in little steps and build it up.
And word it slightly different, like you've said.
Exactly. But you don't have to always offer an excuse.
It's not convenient tonight.
Definitely. I mean, there's so much we could talk about confidence. We've run over a bit, so we're going to have to stop there. But there's loads of great books on it. Again, I've talked about Never Split the Difference with Chris Voss. That's a great one. I'm sure you've got loads on self-esteem and confidence we can put on there.
The Happiness Trap.
The Happiness Trap is a great one. So really look into it. There's plenty out there, and hopefully you're feeling a bit more confident this week. Next week, we're getting into our next month, which is What Creates Loneliness and Brain Changes Month, which is a big one. So I think a lot of people coming out of lockdown are feeling very lonely and isolated, so we're going to talk about that next week, over the next 3 weeks, and we'll see you next week to start that. See you then.